Hey everyone, we're back with yet another camera test for the Vivo X70 Pro. Today we're going to test various demanded features in the comment section such as video stabilization options and more. We'll also be checking out Pro Video mode, which you can use to make much more cinematic content and other things along with that. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the color modes. So if you swipe left or right on the screen just from anywhere, you can control the saturation of the image. So I can make it grayscale, or I can increase saturation to maximum, or I can keep it between the two levels. And if you want to make the image look like how your eyes can see it, then you can click on this left side, this Zeiss icon right here, and it reduces the saturation by about 20%. And I'm going to show you the difference this makes. First we'll take a normal photo. Now we'll take a Zeiss natural color photo. And I want you to look at these photos very carefully at a glance. First, this is the Zeiss natural color photo. Here we have a normal photo. Now if you look at them side by side, what do you see? For example, the sky in the right photo is much more saturated, and so is the grass on the bottom. This is a subtle difference, but many keen eyes will notice this. If you want your photos to seem more real and true to life, you can use Zeiss natural color to help you do that. Otherwise, you can use the normal color mode to be a little more saturated. On to the next. Why is my flash on? On to zoom, and you can get more zoom. You can get nice up close shots. This is a 12 megapixel sensor, so it has its limitations, but it's really quite, it's more than what you need for photography. Now on to Pro mode. Pro mode is one of my favorite features on this phone. It's over here. Here you basically have full manual controls over all the camera settings, everything. So for example, if you want to use the 5x telephoto, you can. Now normally when you're using the 5x telephoto in the normal camera, what it does is, sometimes if your subject is close, it will automatically switch lenses. In this case it hasn't, but it usually does. This can be very annoying sometimes, so you might want to switch to Pro mode. Here you can choose what lenses you want to use. It's completely up to you, and you can adjust all these different parameters: ISO, exposure time, white balance, focus, and EV, which is basically a combination of ISO and exposure time, I believe. And finally you have RAW mode. RAW mode basically allows you to shoot a very high information photo. In other words, the phone will shoot a photo and not process the image. This means you have a very information rich photo, and if you know what you're doing, you can use this to get really good looking photos, especially at night. Finally, we have this additional Zeiss natural color, just so you have the chance to use it if you want it. And then there's the ultra wide. The ultra wide on this phone, by the way, 12 megapixels, plenty for an ultra wide. There are phones out there with 50 megapixel ultra wide lenses. Obviously the higher the better for ultra wide, but it doesn't make a big difference. I don't find myself using the 50 megapixel mode very much because there are some sacrifices you have to make to use it. For example, the dynamic range isn't that great. If you take a picture, for example, 50 megapixels, here you can see that if you click up here, the picture is 8 into 6000 pixels, so it's high resolution and all, but in reality no one's ever going to zoom in that much, so I just stick to 12 megapixels. People talk about high resolution cameras and stuff, but in reality it's really kind of a gimmick. Anyways, one thing many have asked to show in the phone is video. Now in this phone, yes, you do have plenty of options for video. This is the default video mode. Over here you have your resolution and frame rate. You can go all the way up to 4K at 60 frames per second, which is nice. You can, but the downside of using 4K resolution or above 30 fps is that you cannot use the telephoto cameras. In other words, you cannot zoom in optically. You cannot use the 2x and 5x lenses on this phone if you're using 4K video. Whereas if you switch to, I want you to look at this right here, this this zoom slider, and if I switch to 1080p at 30 frames per second, what happens is suddenly you have these 2 and 5 options. But if I switch to 4K, you don't have these options. You only have 2x, and this 2x, let me remind you, is a crop of the it's just cropping the video. It's not zooming in with the 2x lens. So that's a sacrifice you have to make if you want to use higher resolution video. I'm not sure why Vivo did this. I think it has something to do with how much the chip can handle at a moment. But honestly, if you want to zoom into something, just use 1080p, because you can use the zoom lenses, and as you can see, it looks really cool. If you zoom out, you can even use the wide angle, but you can't do this with 4K video. Now I will go on to Pro Video Mode. Pro Video Mode, as you can see here, you get the same controls as you would with Pro Photo Mode, but you also get more resolution and stuff like that. For some reason, it shows 120 and 240 over here, although you cannot use those in any video mode. I'm not sure why it's showing this. Maybe they just need to bake the software a little bit more, but yeah, you can control all these functions if you want to. Finally, what many people have been asking for, video stabilization. Now, this phone, yes, does have a built-in gimbal, and it's a really good gimbal. Let me show you what I mean. If I go to off, what that means is the phone's stabilization in any way or form is switched off. So you will get some, some kind of shake. But if you switch that to standard, so now we're in standard stabilization mode. Here you have the luxury of using 4K video while using the gimbal stabilization. Now it's not the best, but it works. I would be fine with this if I want to make a simple video, a simple cinematic video. Oh, I should mention that you also have the chance to use this movie. So this is basically a movie aspect ratio, these black bars up and down. Yes, you can use this with 4K if you want to. Finally, we move on to, let me just turn off this movie mode. Right. Finally, we move on to the most stable video mode, which is ultra. This is ultra stable mode, which basically shoots at 1080p 60 frames per second. Now I will verify that this is 1080p. You can't use 4K in ultra stabilization mode because the phone needs to crop into 4K video to get even more stabilization. This is a combination of electronic image stabilization and the gimbal stabilization, so it's really stable. Now I wish I could show you guys how stable this is with a mirror or something to show you just how much I'm shaking the phone, but there's no way I can do that right now, but I'll see if I can do it later on. Anyways, it does have ultra stable, but I will warn you, don't buy this phone purely for the ultra stable video, because you can buy a GoPro for about the same price of this phone or less with even better stabilization, and you can shoot 4K on a GoPro with stabilization on. So keep this in mind. Also, you have this option here. This is basically artificial background blur. So basically it'll do think like portrait mode but for video. So it's not the most refined artificial background blur, but you have the option, and that's something I really like. I like that Vivo doesn't take themselves very seriously like Apple does. They give you all these options. I don't use this very much because personally I prefer the camera blur, and if I use artificial background blur, it's usually because I'm using it with the front camera. Here you have a bunch of features like changing your skin tone, and it's actually kind of scary what things you can adjust of your face when you're filming someone. Finally, wait, what the hell have I done? Nothing, please. Finally, we have filters. Yeah, just filters. Many phones come with these now. These are good filters to use, but I would recommend just shooting a plain video and then editing it later. Anyways, so that'll do it for today. Thank you for watching, and let me know down below in the comment section what kind of content you're looking for from this channel. Anyways, subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you in the next show. Bye.